All right, the De Bello Gallico, book 5, chapter 41, Ambiorix and his allies are at Cicero's camp. Every single day, a new attack is made. Cicero's camp is running like a factory 24/7. At night, getting ready for the next day. Next day, fighting it out. And so now we're going to see a parlay that is suggested. And Ambiorix probably tried to pull the same tricks that he had done successfully against Sabinus and Cotta. Then, the leaders and the top dogs, the principes, of the Nervii, who had some approach of a speech. Now, what does this mean, who had some approach of a speech? In other words, who already had dealt with Cicero. People that Cicero knew, a prior relationship. Kind of like when Ambiorix talked to that crowd at Cotta and Sabinus' camp, they chose two guys to go talk to him. One guy was the friend of Sabinus, and the other guy was a guy who had a prior relationship. So that's what it means. Leaders of the Nervii who did have some approach of a speech and a cause of friendship with Cicero, in other words, he knew them, those leaders, say that they themselves want to talk. They want to parley. With the power, potestate, having been given. In other words, Cicero agrees to talk. And why would he? Because he knows these guys of the Nervii. With the power having been given, the power to speak, they point to, we get the word commemorate, but they indicate, they point to the same things, this is your accusative plural, which Ambiorix had driven with Titurius, Sabinus. They're going to bring up the same exact points of Ambiorix. And what are these points? That all Gaul was in arms. Remember that Ambiorix had said that it wasn't just his attack, that all of Gaul was attacking Roman camps. Coordinated. That the Germans had crossed the Rhine. Again, the specter of the German hordes coming across is always scary. And that the winter camps of the remaining ones, so the winter camps of the remaining ones of Caesar were being attacked. And so these are the things that they point to, or are being attacked actually, this infinitive present, same time as commemorant. They even add, concerning the death of Sabinus. And they point to, they show Ambiorix for the sake of faith about to be made. In other words, they say, yeah, Sabinus has been killed. And their proof is like, Ambiorix is here in our camp. Why else would he be here? And so they point out all of these items in their enticement of trying to obviously maybe get Cicero to leave. Continuing on. These are the parlayers of the Nervii, they say that they, the Romans, are making a mistake if they, the Romans, would hope anything of protection, praesidium praesidii, from these guys, their fellow Roman camps, who despair, who are despondent, who are helpless. That's what diffido, diffidare means, in their own affairs. What they're indicating is like, look, Cicero, you shouldn't be counting on Labienus' camp or any of the other guys' camps coming to arrest you, because they can't even get their junk together. So you need not try to think that you can depend upon other Romans coming to the rescue when they themselves can't even get it together. And so again, they say that they, the Romans, are making a mistake if they would hope anything of protection from these guys, other camps, who are despondent in their own affairs. However, they say that, dicunt, that they, the accusative subject, are hoc anima, with this mind, with this intent, against Cicero and the Roman people. In other words, this is the real beef that we have against you, your camp, and the Romans. And what is this mind? They are with this mind, that they have a problem with nothing that they recusant, that they point to as a problem. Nothing except the winter camps. And they do not want this custom in Wetaraskere to become the norm. So essentially what they're saying is that their problem is with the camps. And so again, they're with this mind against the Roman people, that they find fault in nothing. They got a problem with nothing except those camps. And why do they have a problem with the camps? Feeding them. The pressure of the grain. And they don't want this to become the norm. Why do you not get up and, at a whim, clear the dinner table? Because then your mom and dad might expect you to clear the dinner table. Why do you not do the dishes? Because you might expect to be doing the dishes. And they don't want this to become in where paraskere, an inceptive verb, as you can see, to become the norm. They don't want this custom to become old hat. They say that it is permitted for those guys in his camp, safe and sound, to depart through themselves, in other words, of their own accord, out of the winter camps, and to set out without fear into any parts they could, would, should, might, may, want. Subjunctive, obviously. So they're giving them the same deal, or the Nervii to Cicero, that Ambiorix had given to Sabinus. We're going to let you leave, Cinemetu, without fear, safe and sound, wherever you want to go. We and our problem, we just don't want you here. The same line of reasoning Ambiorix. Ambiorix was like, it's a win-win when you leave. We don't have to feed you anymore. It's exactly what the Nervii are saying to Cicero. Continuing on. Cicero's response is a little bit different. He's a Cicero. He is not a Sabinus. His brother and he have brains between the ears. Cicero responded only to these things. One thing. So to these demands, suggestions, Cicero responded only one thing. And what was the one thing his response was? That it was not the custom of the genitive Roman people to accept a condition, to accept terms from an armed enemy. So he's like, look, we're not going to negotiate with you when you're holding swords. So from an armed enemy. And then Cicero tries to do a little reverse psychology. But if they should want, remember present subjunctives, willim, willis, willit, from wallo welle, in a C clause, should and then would. But if they should want to go away from their weapons, in other words, lay down your weapons, give up your weapons, that they would use, now utantur is from utor, uti, so you can see that it is a third conjugation. Short ERE turns into a long I when it looks passive, as this deponent verb does. And this is the verb that is going to take an ablative object. And so therefore, there's your ablative. Sui, sibi, say. But the accusative and the ablative are the form say. But if they should want to go away from their arms, that they would use, they would enjoy him, himself, Cicero, as a helper. That Cicero would help the Nervii. And that they send legates to Caesar. So in other words, go and negotiate with Caesar. And Cicero will speak on their behalf, would be an advocate for them. And he, of course, said that he hoped on behalf of his justice, as in Caesar's, that he hoped that they, implied eos, the Nervii, would, because you add an essay to this to make the infinitive, would obtain, would get what they sought. And this is, of course, petiverent, a perfect subjunctive, and it is an indirect question. Essentially, what is going on here is that Cicero is saying, look, just throw down your weapons, and I will be an advocate on your behalf, and when you negotiate with Caesar, I certainly hope that you get what you're looking for. Because what they apparently are looking for is to no longer have to be responsible for feeding those Roman camps. That is a huge burden that is upon them. And so, Cicero's like, yeah, I'm not going to give up, nor am I leaving the camp, but look, if you want to give up your weapons, we can work it out with Caesar. Now, would Cicero really do that? Probably not. As soon as the weapons were thrown down, he would do to them just as the Nervii would do to him. And so we continue in chapter 42. The Nervii, having been repelled, repello, repellere, repulsi, repulsus, so perfect passive participle, from this hope, it didn't work with Cicero in the way that it had with Sabinus, they encircle Kingunt, Kingo, Kingere, the winter camp, with a wall 9 of feet, and with a ditch 15 of feet. We would say 9 feet by 15 feet. And so therefore, they are really, really hemming them in. And they were taught, well actually, they had learned, cognosco, cognoscere, cognoi. So they had learned these things, these techniques, so that essentially the Nervii build their own wall. So they're going to keep Cicero hemmed in. So Cicero and the Romans are in theirs, and then the Gauls, the Nervii, build their own wall and their own ditch. In other words, to prevent them from being able to escape. So, the Romans have walls and a ditch to keep people out, and then the Gauls, the Nervii, have a wall and a ditch to keep people in. So, they had learned these things from our guys in the custom of previous years. So why did the Gauls know to do this? This is exactly the sort of thing that the Romans would do. Like what later that they will be doing at the Battle of Alesia. And they were taught these things by them whom secretly they were holding as captives, whom as captives they were holding from the army. So the Gauls have Romans that they are holding as hostages or prisoners of war, and these Romans are the ones that show them and tell them how to do these sorts of things. But with no abundance of metal tools, that is what a fermentum is, a metal tool. So, but with no abundance of metal tools which were suitable. Idione us, idione a, idione usually takes a dative object, but here it takes a prepositional phrase, which were, impervious subjunctives, suitable for this use. And what would you need to be able to dig these sorts of ditches? You would need shovels and picks and all sorts of things, but without no abundance of those tools, which were suitable for this use, they were seen to cut the caespates, the sod, with swords, so they're using their swords as a pick, and they were seen to drain the earth with their hands and with their cloaks. They're digging up the earth that is loosened by the sword, so they were seen to cut the sod with their swords, so loosen up the dirt, and to drain the earth with their hands and cloaks. And what do they do with the cloaks? It's like when you rake leaves onto a tarp. They're using the cloaks to obviously gather up all the dirt that they are excavating. And indeed, quidem. Quidam would be a certain, but quidem is indeed. A idem, or from is a id, would be the same. So this is the one that is obviously the adverb that means indeed. Indeed, from qua, this, because it's the equivalency of a hic hac hoc or lay la lud, it's just a linking weave. From this situation, the multitude of men, that multitude in the nominative, was able to be known. So they know exactly how many Gauls are out there. And why do they know? Because they see them all working, digging in this ditch and wall to entrap them, enclose them into their camps. 4. by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, in less than 3 hours, they made a defense, a munition, in a circle 3,000 of paces. So essentially, they were able, in less than 3 hours, that's what it says here, for less than 3 hours, they made a defense work in a circle 3,000 million of paces. And so this would be 3-mile circuit did they make in only 3 hours. Can you imagine digging a ditch 3 miles in circumference in only 3 hours? You would need a lot of people. That's exactly what they got. And so it must be intimidating to the Romans inside that camp. And by, with, because of, from, in, on, at the remaining days, they began to prepare and to make towers to the altitude, the height of the wall. And so these are essentially siege towers that they're going to push up and be at the height of the Roman wall. Remember that the Romans have their own ditch. That's the ground level. You dig a ditch, then you take all the dirt, and you make, actually you probably want to go straight up, and then you would of course have a wall, and then you get back down to ground level. And that is your defense wall, and here then is the fence that you would make on the side. So the Gauls, what they're doing is they're making towers to where they would push it up, and it would be the same height. And these towers are obviously in full sight of being made for the moment of the attack, whenever that might be. I think of maybe a scene from like the Lord of the Rings movies and those sorts of things like that. So, and on the remaining days, they began to prepare and to make towers, torres, to the height of the wall. They began to prepare to make falques. These are grappling hooks, like at the very beginning of the animated Mulan, when that one grappling hook comes over the wall, and then all of a sudden you see all the thousands of grappling hooks. And tortoise shells. Tortoise shells are the military unit foundations that essentially is like a little Flintstone car that allow you to approach the wall of a camp or wall of a city and not have arrows and or other things being thrown down on you. Kind of like a little movable shed, and that's what these tortoise shells are. Things which those same captives have taught. And so the reason why these Gauls know how to make these siege equipment is because those Romans that they have as their hostages are obviously able to have then taught them. And so now in the next chapters, what we will see is the attack itself and the outcome of such a siege. Thanks.